Hello everyone, what's up? Moses here, bringing you a Path of Exile video guide, and this time it's going to be a little bit different because this time I'm going to talk about the build guide, show you the gameplay, and after all that we're going to talk a bit more on how I created this character. I think I got a little bit of a fun story to tell and how this character came about, and yeah, it's something I think especially new players are going to be able to learn from. So let's first get started with the regular part of the build guide. This is an elemental hit Scion, but this time I decided to, first time playing elemental hit. So yeah, I never played it before, and they introduced combat focus jewels that make elemental hit choose a single element basically by eliminating the other two. So this time I decided to focus on lightning only. Everybody's running fire, I'm running lightning, and it works out just great. Alright, so let's talk about how we built this character. First and foremost, lightning. I got two setups. One is for clearing. This is the clearing setup, and the other is for single target. Single target has heavy focus on level of gems, and the clearing setup not so much. All right, so let's talk about the links. We got the single target has elemental hit. The gem, of course, is level 21, and it gets a whole bunch of a whole bunch of levels from the item that has +1 level socketed gems and +2 level socketed support gem craft for the empower. So this is in fact a level 28 elemental hit, and it scales just like a spell basically, which means the higher level of gem, the more damage it's going to do. Very, very substantially. It scales very hard with gem level, just like a spell. So this is our single target. I got it on my queue with slower projectiles, with Mirage Archer, with Empower, level 4, with lightning penetration, and with elemental damage with attacks. Again, all these supports are getting +3 from the Empower. It's kind of insane. And for the clear, we're using an elemental hit, different setup with GMP, with chain, with elemental damage with attacks, with Empower level 4 because it still scales very heavily with gem levels, and then increased critical strike chance. The chest is an astral plate we crafted. I'm going to talk about this later, but for now it has 2 critical strike chance, a whole bunch of life, and some light res and implicit resistance. The helmet over here, we got nearby enemies have negative light res. This is a fossil craft we're going to talk about later, and the hybrid life roll of life and flat life, increased maximum life and flat life. So this helmet gives us about 340 flat life overall. Feels pretty good, and the helm enchant is elemental hit, deals increased damage 40%. For the amulet, I just got a crit with a chaos resist. I didn't really need the fire. We got overcapped fire resist, but I did need the chaos resist. I'm going to talk about that later. With just crit multi and a bunch of as much life as I could get. Over here is just a quiver with crit multi, big life, big resist, big elemental damage with attacks, just a rare quiver, good stuff. Over here we just got 30% movement speed, big resistances, and big life. Enchant is pretty bad, but that's what I got, and I'm not a big fan of labs, so this character is not going to run more labs, it's whatever. And over here we got Tomb Fist with the 2 critical strike chance enchant. And over here we got life, lightning damage, elemental damage with attacks, and 67 Ores. This is a fractured belt that you can get in the Nexus up until Nexus goes away from the game, and you won't be able to get it in the Nexus anymore. RIP. But for now you can get it in the Nexus. And then on top of that you craft Prismatic for increased elemental damage and chance to proc more elemental rolls, which gives us the resistances, which could give us the elemental damage with attacks, and the increased lightning damage that can only come from metallic fossil. And we do that on the base of the fractured mod that is guaranteed to be 93 life, which means no matter how many, we're always going to, no matter how many prismatic and metallic two-socket resonators we're going to slam on this, it's always going to keep the 93 to maximum life. Tier 1 flat life over here always, no matter what. So that's what's so good about fractured items, that you can sometimes keep it. Also, like this right here, the global crit chance. But yeah, I didn't craft this one. I just did this one. This I just bought. I think it was 1 exalt on PoE trade. What else is worth to talk about? The bow itself has a tier 1, crit multi-modded with +1 level socketed gems. We crafted lightning damage, 80%, 13% attack speed, and +2 level of socketed support gems. So you get all that damage for the elemental hit, all that +2 levels, +6. It's kind of ridiculous, +6 from the support, in fact, if you think about it. Level 7 in power. Sheesh. Alright, and the core of the build, the idea actually came, I started thinking about this build because I came across these rings, and these rings have damage per endurance, damage per frenzy, and flat damage per power charge, and these are identical precursor emblem rings. They can be crafted through the delve bosses. They drop 3 different rings, you combine them together, you get one of these. They're random, maybe you hit something like this. These were only 100 chaos each, and they don't exist on PoE trade. These were the only 2. One guy had 2 of them, and there aren't any more, and I bought both for 200 chaos total from the one guy. So you can't make this build unless you find exactly something like this in the future, but for now they do not exist. Alright, so the idea of the build is to be able to stack all the charges charged up with frenzy, endurance, and power charges, and this is, and then we're getting a whole bunch of bonuses, 10% per endurance, 10% per frenzy, and 4 to 40 flat lightning per power charge. That's the idea. On top of that, the rings have resistances. They also have 2 attributes, some life. Feels pretty good, man. So in order to be able to reliably generate these charges, I needed to become the Scion I was born to be, and in order to do that, we got the Juggernaut that gives us endurance charge every second. If you've been hit recently, we can proc that with Gluttony or just by getting hit in a map. If you use Gluttony, it says take physical damage when you use a movement skill, which procs that hit recently, and then you generate your endurance charges. Up to a maximum of 4, because that's all I can afford on my tree. Frenzy and power charges. Frenzy we're getting off of Raider. Onslaught we're also getting, perma onslaught, perma frenzy. Just one more word about the endurance charge. This actually gives us 5% more damage, or increased damage per endurance charge. So there's that, cannot be chilled, cannot be stunned, and 1000 accuracy, so we don't have to worry about that on gear unless we accidentally get it, which we actually did. But yeah, endurance charge generation, being the Jugg, cannot be stunned, and the damage, and a bunch of accuracy. And over here, this is how we generate our frenzies. Frenzy is, more damage per frenzy charge, and of course more attack speed per frenzy charge. And when we reach maximum frenzies, we are getting onslaught, which is 20% attack, cast, and movement speed. Right, so perma onslaught, perma frenzy charges, and we're gonna get all these juicy increased damage rolls off of these precursor emblem rings, which makes for a pretty unique type of way of building a character, because over here we pick up every single endurance, frenzy, and power charge that we can have adjacent, in good proximity for our build, that we can grab, because all of these each one increases our damage substantially. And that was the idea of this character. So we got that Raider, Path of the Ranger. On the tree, we're picking up all the charges we can get, all the life that we can get, all the crit for bows, of course, point blank, lethality with all the crit, elemental damage with attacks, all the crit, acro phase acro, all the crit. I actually did mention that. Thick skin, probably the projectile damage and projectile attack speed later on, and then the shadow. Damage, crit, life, and attack speed. On Scion, we are getting, of course, the unnatural instincts because 45% chance, 45% crit multi, 8% life, 9% movement speed, and I believe it's 9 plus 13 total attack speed we're getting off of the investment of simply 4 nodes. Is insane. So it's kind of a must-have. We're getting that for sure for this build. This combat focus is just so we could choose, cannot choose cold, and this is really, unfortunately, but it's really the only node that we can use outside of this one. The tree won't reach here. We can only get this, so we have to invest these points, unfortunately, the second one can go over here, cannot choose fire, so that we deal only lightning. Outside of that, just, yeah, projectile damage nodes. We do have a Watcher's Eye here that gives us increased critical strike chance while affected by Wrath, and Mana Leech while affected by Wrath. So that's how we get our Leech, and we're getting a bunch of increased critical strike chance while affected by Wrath. I didn't go with penetration in this build, because we're getting enough penetration from the gem. That's 40% elemental penetration, so I didn't want to pick up another 15. It wouldn't make too much sense, especially since we're also using cast when damage taken linked with Wave of Conviction, and if we hover over it, we see that it deals more lightning damage than anything, right? It deals some physical, some fire, but a lot of lightning damage because that's what we're scaling. So naturally it will cause the negative 25 elemental exposure towards lightning, so enemies will have less 25 and they will have 9, you know, over here, so that's 34, and then for single target we are using the lightning penetration, so that's like, you know, 64 negative lightning res, so we're good. We don't need it on the Watcher's Eyes as well. So I ended up just choosing crit chance while Wrath and lightning leeched as mana while Wrath, so we don't have to worry about that. This was like only 6 exalt or something like that. Pretty good stuff. The character itself was in fact pretty expensive. Everything all together, I don't know. I did end up spending quite a little bit over this character, but hey, this is the last build of the league, right? It's been effectively, you know, 9 weeks. This is build number 8, so, and it's the last build, right? Since the league started, and next week is the synthesis 1-month event, and we're going to build, you know, everything else. So I had all this currency, and now I basically don't. So I had like 40 exalts or something like that I spent on this character. I don't care. It feels pretty good, and that's where we're at right now after it. What else? Links that I did not mention. So we did talk about the Enfeeble with cast when damage taken and Wave of Conviction for the lightning exposure. One thing is, I do not use Immortal Call because it expands your, sure, it gives you the physical damage immunity, but it expands your endurance charges, which means you're more vulnerable and for a short period of time, and then you lose a whole lot of damage. Excuse me. So you lose 60% damage because damage per endurance charge we're getting from the Ascendancy. We got 4 endurance charges and then 10% over here. So overall 60% increased damage lost. I don't want that, so I don't have Immortal Call. Character survives just fine. Blink Arrow just as a single link. Blood Rage just as a single link. Reservation is Wrath and Herald of Thunder, of course, because only lightning. And other links that we have are Orb of Storms, linked with Chain, Power Charge on Crit, and Culling Strike or Blind you could use as well. So this is how we get our power charges. And with Chain, you just permanently get all these power charges. For the rest of the jewels, we talked about all the unique ones. You know, cannot choose cold. I picked one with cannot be hindered. Pretty useful corruption. And because elemental hit is vastly used for fire, when you cannot choose fire and then you get corrupted blood cannot be inflicted on you, this jewel was like 10 chaos and it's been sitting there for days. You know, like, I don't know, 2 weeks or something. Nobody bought it, so I bought this one for like 10 or 12 or 13 cows, something like ridiculous like that, right? So we got that corrupted blood cannot be inflicted on you on a near perfect combat focus that cannot choose fire, because nobody uses elemental hit with anything but fire except me, I guess. So feels pretty good. And the other jewel that we have here, just life and double crit multi. Right, crit multi with fire skills, crit multi with elemental skill. One thing to note is that I don't have too many of them, but when it comes to the crit multi modifiers, we can pick from everything, because this skill has fire tag, cold tag, lightning tag, and you know, you can get the global multi, you can get whatever multi. You know, there's a whole lot of crit multi with elementals. There's crit multi with cold, crit multi with fire, crit multi with elemental skills, and global crit multi. There's like 5 crit multi mods that you could potentially get on a jewel, so it's something to note. Over here I just got crit multi with lightning skills apparently, and 6% max life and 12 to chaos resist. The reason why I picked up chaos resist is because elemental hit cannot deal chaos damage, right? It can only deal damage that it chooses, either fire, cold, or lightning. It even says so on the gem. Only deal damage of the chosen element, deals no damage deals no damage of other damage types. So only the one that it chooses. If it chooses lightning, that's all you're gonna use. So normally we would use a series promise and we're gonna get 15% elemental as extra chaos. Not gonna work with this elemental hit, right? So instead, I, you know, foresaw a situation where syndicate members just one-shot me. So I started thinking about all this chaos resist that we're missing, so that we normally would get. And I remembered the Juggernaut had pretty easy life, you know, dealing with everything chaos, because Juggernaut, right? And Nebulous and all that stuff. So I kind of envied the Jugg having, I think it was 59 positive chaos resist overall, which is ridiculous. So instead what I did was just invested a little bit in chaos resistance. So instead of a series promise, we get our ignite immune amethyst flask, which has 35 chaos resist. We have this chaos resist instead of crit chance, right? Because the global crit chance of this character is really high. Because of the 2 crit chance here and 2 crit chance here, and the crit chance that we have from the Watcher's Eyes, as well as crit chance everywhere for the bows, right? We get a whole bunch of crit. We end up with effective 80% with power charges without the diamond flask, so we're effectively 100% critting all the time. Kind of ridiculous, right? So I just was like, yeah, I got enough damage. Why wouldn't I just invest a little bit in chaos resist? So I got this chaos resist here, chaos resist here, and chaos resist here. And when we pop this thing, we got positive 10%. So we're not getting one-shotted by Syndicate most of the times. So there it is. This is the build. Wrath and all that kind of stuff. I think I've talked about every single thing in detail, and it is time to run this Temple of Atzoatl with you guys. I don't have too much in terms of rooms. It's kind of a lame temple, but it is, I think, area level 80? 83. Oh, that's a tier 16 area. Feels pretty good, man. So we pop our Blood Rage, and we're getting our charges. Of course, whenever we get hit, see, we get all of our Endurance, Power, and Frenzy charges. And Elemental hit rocks with Chain and with GMP. We basically clear everything. The little, you know, whenever you get hit, enemies take some you can see right here, and when we get hit, see these little waves of conviction. That means enemies have that lightning exposure we talked about. Whenever there's a tough monster, we just throw 1Q, and then our Mirage Archer will complete and finish the job. If the single target is not dead, and basically this is the build. Now, one thing it doesn't have is the whole meta around whatever explosions and all that stuff, right? So I could have chosen this build could have looked a whole lot more flashy if I ended up using Impulsas, but I intentionally did not because I don't know. I'm tired of meta, man. I'm like Impulsa. Why not Impulsa? Like people already like Lightning. Why not Impulsa? I know Impulsa is good. You know, everybody knows. Oh, level 89 feels pretty good. I know Impulsa is good, friends. I know it's good, but let's try and make something a bit different, a bit unique. You know, that is not Impulsa. I mean, why would we? I mean, I could have gone, I guess, perhaps, maybe not. Generating frenzies would have been a bit hard on something that is not a raider, and generating, yeah. I was thinking perhaps, I mean, frenzies is one thing, but getting it on bosses is another, you know? And for that you need either Raider or Raider Ascendancy. So, I don't know. I don't know. Still, I don't think this is really a good way to do it. I was for a second there thinking about Elementalist. But you see, the build basically like plays itself. It's pretty freaking awesome. Right click and everything dies, except proximity shields. And if there's a rare monster or something like that, you could just pop the Q. It is kind of name locky, so it could be a little bit annoying to do it, but you know, you could totally do it. And 1Q on a rare monster or you know, one of these architects, and you're good. Ooh, wow, wow! Look at that! Look at that! Beautiful. Anything else? That was a tier 2 room. Did I miss another chest here? I don't know. I think I'm like the only person that runs the temple without without having like a chamber of corruption or anything like that. I don't really care, honestly. I just enjoy it. What can I say? I very much enjoy the temple and the music here and the monsters and the fact that it's like such a big. I think it's like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's like the biggest zone in the game when there's like no loading in between. And I mean, it's all, I don't know. It doesn't have too much in terms of quantity or whatever. It's not like a map that you get like 100 quantity or whatever. But I think it's pretty good. I think it's pretty good. I don't know. I just like to run free and destroy every room and kind of like clear it. It's just, it's fun for me. Especially like on a new character like this, there's so many monsters here. And it's in fact pretty good for XP. It's not a bad thing to do. That's a jeweler's room. Okay. So every time, in terms of like gameplay, every time you you know, you engage, elemental hit has a thing. Let me tell you about it. Elemental hit has a thing. The thing about elemental hit is that it costs a whole lot of mana. This is why I'm not using a war banner. In case you thought about it and was like, why is no? Yeah, no war banners because elemental hit does cost a whole lot of mana, and it doesn't allow me. Oh, nice! It doesn't allow me to. It doesn't allow me to get a war banner because it reserves too much. It costs me. I got like 183 free unreserved, right? 183 mana. It costs me 60 mana for one hit, or 54 and 57. That's way more than like normal skills do for some reason. I don't know, but that basically doesn't allow me to run. Maybe it's a bug. Maybe it's just, I don't know, but it just won't. It just won't cost, you know, affordable you know, cost to be able to run um, you know, War Banner. So I simply cannot do it, unfortunately. Anyways, another thing that I want to talk about, Elemental Hit, is because we're using Lightning, and Lightning has a thing where, um, okay, so the gap between the minimum and the maximum amount of damage is huge. If we look at Elemental Hit, we see 1,870 to, well, it goes down now with time, but 1.7k to 29k. 1.7k to 29k. The reason this just basically what it does is it causes certain hits to hit like a truck and certain hits to hit not so much like a truck, right? So sometimes you'll see like huge spikes. Sometimes, you know, sometimes enemies will get chunked. Sometimes enemies just will take a few hits to die. That's because of the nature of lightning, and because, you know, if a skill procs continuously, something like Stormburst is also lightning, you know, but when it procs continuously, what happens is that when it ticks a lot of times, you get the average happening kind of like you know, evenly. You kind of like get an even spread of what's happening. But when you use this skill with something like Elemental Hit, where every hit actually matters, if you fail the RNG roll, like, we're almost always gonna crit. Because I was gonna share this, but I kind of failed. But let me share this now. We're almost always gonna crit. If we look at our offense, Elemental Hit, where is it? Not this one. This one. If you look at our offense, Elemental Hit, you see 78.36. With Diamond Flask, that basically we have all the time. This is the chain effect, by the way. With Diamond Flask, that we basically have all the time. This is 100% crit, so we're always critting, but we're not always hitting, you know, properly. Sometimes the hit will be huge, sometimes the hit will be small. That depends on your RNG. Anyways, this was the temple, and this was kind of like the showcase for the builds. I hope you enjoyed it. I also leveled up. So we said that around level 94, we're going to be able to have enough skill points to get into projectile, jewel socket, and then all this leech. And then we get life and mana leech over here, and then maybe we change an amulet, because currently we're only leeching life over here. I believe this node says, oh, it says attack damage. So we got 0.9% leech, which is fine, but we do want that increased total recovery of life per second from life leech off of Soul Raker. So that's only going to happen at level 94. It should have happened at level 90, but the only node that has the requirement for cannot choose cold is in fact here. I was hoping we could do it like here, and then we have 4 more points, and then we reach Soul Raker with the Lionized Fall Jewel at level 90 instead of level 94, which is just next level. But yeah, we just don't have the nodes to unspec for it, unfortunately. So we're just going to spec into some life at this point. And this was it. This was basically the build. Now let's take a look at what we have here. Cast damage, chance to poison on hit. It's garbage. Here we got lightning damage to spells, cast damage to spells, cast speed, crit multi, and adds lightning damage. It's pretty bad also. That's bad. Dexterity and strength, that's very bad. Nothing here, no. That's pretty bad. And now let's talk about the idea and how I created the build and all that kind of stuff. Alright, so the build guide is over. Okay, if you want to listen to me talk for about, I don't know, 10-15 more minutes. Feel free to stick around. Maybe you'll learn something, especially if you're new to the game. I'm sure you'll learn a lot. Alright, so how this build came to be. I've been talking about Divine Ire Totem build that I wanted to make for days now, for months actually. And there was always something, you know, in my life, I'm very easily distracted when it comes to builds. I see something cool, I want to do it, I want to do it now, I just go for it. Right? So the way that it worked is I got this ring off of one of the Delve bosses in like depth 600, I think it was an all or whatever, one of them. I killed them with the Juggernaut, right? So we killed a whole bunch of bosses with the Juggernaut. There's videos. And then one of those rings was, you know, one of these, you know, rings that you combine 3 and then you get one result. And I wanted to price check it. And I started looking up some rings and I started researching that type of ring. I was like, man, there's some cool possible results. And I was looking it up and I saw this. And I was like, man, I'm going to be able to make a pretty viable build with any lightning skill with dual wielding those rings, right? I thought it's going to be pretty cool to build around a character that just stacks all the possible charges and deals a whole bunch of damage based on how many charges it has, right? So that's how the build, the idea, you know, first sparked. So I was, okay, let's see if there's another one. There was, and then the same person was selling both of these rings and they're not existent, right? So I paid about 100 chaos for each and I kept them and I continued playing the Juggernaut while thinking, what can I do with rings like this? What would fit? Do I want a spell? Do I want an attack? What do I want? A bow? I ended up going with Elemental Hit because I figured Elemental Hit is something people have been talking about since they revamped and since they introduced the combat-focused jewels, which are jewels that I think have been around for 3 leagues, maybe since Abyss, maybe since Abyss League, if I'm not mistaken. But I never really got around to play with them, and you know, everybody's talking about Fire, how OP Elemental Hit is, and it's been OP, and it's very OP. Apparently, I don't know, I've never played it, but people have been saying that it's been very, very, very OP. So I was like, Lightning, Elemental Hit, let's try it, why not? So that's how the build kind of like started, the idea. And then I was like, okay, so I gotta reliably generate all the charges because I want Frenzy, Power, and Endurance charge. The only way to do it naturally, easily, comfortably is getting a Scion, because as we mentioned, Juggernaut generates the Endurance, Frenzies by Raider, and you get free Onslaught and attack damage and movement speed, a little bit of chance to dodge. Here you get Cannot Be Stunned and Accuracy. Cannot Be Chilled, feels pretty freaking good, right? And power charges are easy to get with Orb of Storms or Stormbrand with power charge on crit. I personally am a big fan of Orb of Storms because you just drop it and it chains and it culls or it blinds and it procs really frequently, and it's really easy to keep track. It's a big circle. It's really easy to keep track if it's active. You know, for me, that's the choice. I know other people love Stormbrand, for example, with power charge on crit. For me, this is the choice. Doesn't matter. It's the same, just a matter of you know, whatever you're used to. So I'm, you know, very keen on that, and it's a pretty easy way to generate. And now, how else do we continue? I knew that Elemental Hit is a skill that scales very hard with gem levels because I've been around the block and I've heard some stuff people talk about this skill, and it's what I gathered, that it scales very hard like a spell, right, based on gem level. It's not affected by your weapon at all, except if that weapon has +2 gem levels. So obviously Empower level 4 was a natural choice here. And we found this bow and +2 level socketed support gems. It's a veiled mod you can get, whatever. I found someone that has it, and I crafted it, and I got that lightning damage. I got that attack speed on a bow that existed on PoE Trade. I needed to multi-mod it myself, but the base was 4 exalts for +1 level socketed gems, and tier 1 crit multi seems pretty good multi-mod. and get all the stuff that I need. So we got that 80 lightning damage, that attack speed, and the global crit, and the +2 support gems. Next was the bow base crit is kind of low. I'm going to buy a Watcher's Eye. Watcher's Eye is with Wrath. I looked it up. Obviously, it's going to be Wrath because we're going Lightning. So Wrath Aura is going to be our reservation. Watcher's Eye is with Wrath. Yeah, so I looked it up and I saw they're dirt cheap. They're like 50 castles or so, and I was like, let's see, maybe we can get 2 things off of our Prismatic Watcher's Eye. And then I saw that Mana Leech is very cheap on top of increased critical strike chance. I bought this one only for 6 Exalt, so a double Watcher's Eye perfectly fits my build. And I was like, okay. Yeah, I think the guy wanted 6 and I offered 5 and he accepted. So I think I ended up buying it for 5 or 6. I don't remember. It doesn't matter. What matters is we got the Watcher's Eyes, and that's how we came about building, you know, the characters. So when we first started, we had this and we had this. This is how we started it out, right? This is all we had. And then I was like, pretty much for every attack build out there, right? Pretty much for every attack build out there, what you want is if you don't know it, now you do, no excuse, is the Murderous Eye Jewel inside the Tomb Fist gloves, right? You want that because what that means is Murderous Eye Jewel makes enemies take more damage. Everybody knows it's a more multiplier. It's been there since Abyss League. If you missed it, now you know. It's only for attack damage, not spells. So you want Tomb Fist. They were nerfed, but they're still a very, very strong choice for gloves. So I ended up buying these. I think it was 1.5x or something. I bought these with the 2 critical strike chance with just the 1 socket, so I can get the more multiplier, the intimidate, the abyssal socket that has the lightning damage to attacks, the life, the resist from my build, and I'm going to get the 2 critical strike chance, which is pretty popular on a pretty popular corruption for gloves. So it means that the bow that doesn't have a good crit base, because it rolled crit multi, it means that we're going to add 5 to 0.72 to that 5, which means 5.72 base critical strike chance. And yeah, on top of that, everything is being built. Put this thing here, and this thing cannot still. How about now? How about now? All right. So okay. So what we had was these 2 rings, right? And that was the next step, the gloves. The step after that was getting a helm enchant, right? And I was like, there's one that deals more attack speed, there's one that deals more damage, there's one that deals like area of effect. I went with, I was thinking about it this way. A bull build is good, like, not because it attacks super fast, like for this particular one, not because it attacks super fast, attack speed is not a major factor. What matters here, you want a big hit, right? You want things to get one-shotted when you hit them. You want to just destroy, demolish everything. So you want the attack damage, you don't want the attack speed and chance. So I went with that. The helm was 15 chaos, alright? And yeah, so I had the gloves, I had the bow, I had these 2, and I had the Watcher's Eye. Of course, I had the combat focus jewels, and I got the natural instincts, whatever. This is not necessary. It's just a really good, luxury item, but it's absolutely not necessary for the build. So yeah, I went about and crafted a helmet. The helmet was the next piece of choice. Actually, the next piece of choice was the lightning damage leech as life amulet. I wanted to try and avoid and see, because I never tried it before, I wanted to try and see if I can sustain just with 0.5 of lightning damage leech as life as an attack bow character and save myself the 1, 2, 3, and 4 nodes that I constantly have to get into when I'm making a build for leech, right? We want that leech. And apparently I can, unless if the map has like less recovery, is a bit tough. Less recovery beyond is kind of deadly, but less recovery is pretty tough. But outside of less recovery maps that I can just simply re-roll and avoid, I can pretty much survive. And we did we actually did a beyond tier 16 Elder over here, and it went just fine. It didn't die, and it was really good. I think it was level 86 to 87, pretty much carried us the entire map, full sextants and all that. So yeah, I got that lightning damage leeches life. This is a shaper item, and then it has some crit multi, it has some life, nothing really too special, just some stats, some life, some crit multi, and we crafted that chaos resistance because we needed it. And the next step was, okay, stuff that I do, and this is kind of like the reason why I even started doing the whole introduction. Things are pretty much mandatory, and you may not know when you're creating a build. They're pretty much mandatory. They've been around since Delve League. It's been around for several leagues now. Something you should know. Fossil crafting. It's pretty basic. It's pretty easy. It's pretty cheap, and it's extremely effective. Okay. So what I'm talking about are specifically depends on what elemental or what type of damage your character is doing. There is a fitting fossil that will substantially enhance it. In this case, okay, I'm not going to list every single one, but the popular ones are Scorched for fire, Metallic for lightning, Frigid for cold, etc. Right? So for this build, we use Metallic because we're using only lightning damage. It's a lightning elemental hit build. That's what we're planning. So a very strong and extremely effective mod is nearby enemies have negative lightning resist, which is a fossil only craft, right? And another very effective mod is something that you cannot get otherwise, right? That nearby enemies have negative lightning res. It's really strong. And another thing that you cannot get otherwise on a regular rare helmet is that hybrid life with increased maximum life roll. Right, it takes a prefix, and most prefixes are useless except the flat life that you could get. But now you can also get, just now, in the past several leagues, you can also get increased maximum life and flat life roll, which substantially increases your health pool, which is something that you definitely want. And it is very, very easy to craft. I've shown you in the past, if you've been watching my channel, I've shown you several insane helmets. Sometimes you get a really good, instead of crafting that 67 life, sometimes you get a 90 flat life roll, and then you get 114 flat life with 3%, and it's insane. And I've hit those, and it happens. You just need to try, right? And then on top of that, because it's a lightning fossil, you also get sometimes a big lightning resist, and that life and that nearby enemies have negative. And if you do that on an enchant that you only pay like 20 chaos for, GG, you got yourself a very, very effective helmet slot for your character that has a frick ton of life, helm enchant, and nearby enemies have negative resists for a frick ton of damage, and sometimes even resistances, which is huge. That's all you want for a helm. So we crafted that, boom. Next was, okay, so we have that going for us. Now I want a belt. Belt, same idea, only here, since we're in Synthesis League, we have another option to combine another kind of like crafting system. Now this is not going to be viable because they said they're going to remove Synthesis. I am pretty sad for it, to be honest, but that's a different discussion. I'm going to make another video about Synthesis and how they could improve it. But they're going to remove synthesized and fractured items, which is okay, whatever, that's their choice, I respect it. But these kind of items are not going to be available anymore because that 93 constant roll is not going to be there anymore ever. Until maybe they will revisit and bring back these items. But this is the only chance. This is the only opportunity we have to get these type of items because they're just fractured items are not going to exist. Basically, the fractured items are items that have 1 or 2 or 3 constant rolls. I'm going to give you an example here. This is another, let's put this here so it won't mix up. This is another fractured belt. Thing about it is that even if you scour it, it becomes a magic item. It is not white. When you scour a rare, it becomes white. right? A normal item. So you got normal, you got rare, you got normal, you got magic, you got rare, you got unique, right? It's like the rarity order. But this, when you scour, becomes magic because it has one mod. And that mod is a magic mod, and it's a prefix, and it's a tier 2 life roll of athletes Stygian Vice, right? It's a prefix. So on top of that, you can then regal, turn it into rare, and craft. And whatever you craft is never, ever going to change that 89 life. It's always going to remain 89. You cannot even divine it. Divining will not change to minimum or to maximum, right? I'm not going to use divine because they're 20C and I got 6 of them. But the 89 is always going to change there. It's always going to remain there. It's not going to change. It's constant, right? So what you can do, you can combine 2 different type of crafting onto one item, right? 2 different types of crafting. What do I mean? I mean taking a fractured item with a good starting base, and instead of using pristine to elicit the life rolls, right? We got that life. We could have gotten big flat life roll off of an implicit, which we did on a different item I'm going to show you. But instead of doing that, now we don't need to use pristine. This saves us the uses of the pristine. And instead, we can use prismatic and we can use metallic to induce more elemental mods and more lightning mods. Prismatic will yield this increased elemental damage, right? Which is a mod that you, no matter how many chaos you're going to spam, you're never going to see increased elemental damage. You will see increased elemental damage with attack skills, but not increased elemental damage. This is called of the Underground, which is a suffix, a suffix that can only happen from the Delve mods. All right. And the prefix subterranean, which can only happen from metallic fossils. So you got your metallic, you got your prismatic, and then these give us up to 60% increased damage for our build. 30 from lightning and 30 elemental. Awesome. And then on top of that, I rolled a pretty low elemental damage with attacks. Was kind of disappointed, but yeah, normally you would want obviously more. If it was an open prefix, it would have been better if it didn't roll all together, because then we can craft on top of that up to 32, I believe, is increased elemental damage with attacks craft that we can get. But this is the build we got. For me, it's about 70 plus increased damage. Huge on a build, right? And the tier 1 life and the double resistance. We did the same thing with the Juggernaut. You guys can check out my profile, Juggernaut still there with the Molten Strike, or on the video guide as well, right? So next league, when they remove it, we can use Prismatic for the elemental damage. We can use Pristine for the life. And we can use metallic. This is what we used to do to get all these 3 rolls. Only pristine fossils are pretty expensive, right? So it adds another tier, another cost. 3 socketed fossils, resonators instead of 2 socketed resonators with an additional fossil. That's how you craft a very fairly cheap. I mean, it didn't take me too many attempts to get this. I think it was maybe 10 sets of prismatic and whatever metallic to get this, and I got it. And once I had it, that was it. All right. So once we had that, we can put this aside. We can put this jewel. Jewels, whatever. No need to talk about it. Next was the chest. I had several ideas about a chest. When I first started out this build, I even thought, hey, maybe I could, if I use my 6 link over here, I can just do some gem swaps, and I can get a comms heart. And 500 more life would actually be pretty sick, because there's no flat life rolls on my rings, so I do have a whole lot of increased maximum life, but not much to scale it from, right? I need a lot of flat life roll, and comms heart would be great for me, except I'm glad I didn't choose it, because I ended up seeing that I actually need a different setup. After playing the build, like, the initial thought was maybe I can get a comms heart as a chest, but I ended up, not using it, and I'm happy, because, I just tried out the build. I had some leveling chest that I usually keep as a leveling. This, see, I was using this just as a leveling gear. You can use it from level 59, and I was using it. And once I started mapping, I used this bow from level 64. Once I started mapping, I realized something here is off. I need something for single target. So I ended up going with 2 6-link setups: one for single target, one for for clear. So you know, for the chest, I decided, okay, so I'm not gonna go Com's Heart. I got many options, but the two glaring ones were basically an Impulsa's Broken Heart for all the shock, because we're clearly critting like constantly, and everything is shocked and everything will explode, and you know, all that kind of stuff. But that is more of a meta speed clear type thing that, I don't know, I'm just not a big fan of. I like the game to be a bit slow. I like to feel, you know, to see monsters die, even though that this build feels sometimes very fast. This is the kind of speed that I enjoy in my builds. You could totally, absolutely make similar builds with Impulsa and go faster. But for me personally, the whole speed, you know, the whole speedy boy meta type farming is really just not for me. I like to take things slow and enjoy, enjoy a little bit of slower speed, slowing down the pace of the game, because it feels sometimes like, you know, you get into an area, poof, everything died, move another, poof, everything died, move another, poof, everything dies, and just kind of like, I don't know, it becomes pretty boring, pretty stale to me. I like to feel like I don't know. It's just me. It's just weird. But you build your own characters the way you like. But the two options, getting back, were an Impulsas or crafting something that would, you know, complement the build. This is attacks have 2 critical strike chance. This is a global roll. It doesn't say socketed attacks have 2 critical strike chance. So this affects both my single target setup and my clearing setup, right? It will affect the bow. It will add 1.45 to critical strike chance to the base crit of the bow, right? So this worked perfectly for me. I wanted an Elder chest. I crafted these with Serrated and with Pristine. Again, Pristine comes back because it's a life build. If it's an energy shield build, you'll probably use a whole lot of dense fossils. But life build, we're using Pristine. And Pristine gave us this flat life plus hybrid roll. The Subterranean, as you can see, 25 to 40, and then that 5% increased maximum life, and then we got that of the Elder, which is the reason why I bought an Elder base Astral Plate. Astral Plate because it's got the 12% to all resist implicit, right? And then Astral Plate, it needed to be level 84 to be able to roll the tier 1, which is 1.1 to 1.5 to critical strike chance, right? I've done this research just checking, because I knew that there's like different tiers. I didn't want to buy any Elder base Astral Plate. I needed to get the correct eye level for the requirement. The requirement for me was tier 1 crit to attacks. So I done some research, went to PoE Affix, and I checked, and I saw eye level 84 minimum. That's where I went. That's what I got. You can alternatively go to PoEDB, and I strongly recommend for you guys to check it out. Either PoEDB or PoEaffix.net. Both these websites extremely useful to be able to simply know what items can roll, what different bases. There's so much in the crafting world, and it takes a little bit, you know. But you know, if you want to get into PoE, this is just one of the things that you're going to have to do. By the way, haven't ever used POB. Is a thing. I'm actually quite proud of it. But yeah, anyways, so we crafted this, we got the life, we got the serrated fossil. These are the ones that gives us higher chance for more attack modifiers, and we wanted that attack mod of the crit chance. Awesome. And then we were left with, you know, we needed all the while, as I was crafting, as I was adding up the items, I was looking at my resistances. I was always paying attention, because I was always, okay, how much more resistances do I need? I got 53, I always think 75, right? So we need 75, that's 80, and then 25, and then basically that's all we need, right? So 80 and 25, so we need total 105 resistances right? But these will divide this and that to fire, this and that to cold, right? So I needed to have cold resist here, cold and fire resist somewhere on the next items. And then I simply went to PoE.trade and I was looking for the highest possible 30 movement speed, highest possible life roll with the fire and cold resist that I need. I bought this, there were a couple pairs there. I got this one for 2 exalts, and then I bought the quiver, as much damage as I can with as much life and cold resist to fit. This was the last item, and I needed exactly 41 or higher to get that 75 that we want to cap our resistances. So 41 is the beginning of tier 3, and cold resist, we ended up getting a tier 2 cold resist, right? But it doesn't matter. So this thing has, the crit multi that I was looking for, elemental damage attacks, big life was very, very important. Again, we talked about it. We want a lot of life. The quiver can supply that. That's why I went with a rare quiver. Often unique have like low stats, and I really wanted the flat life here. And yeah, just a whole lot of crit, a whole lot of crit multi, a whole lot of elemental damage attacks, the resistances we need, and this is how we create the character. And then kind of like throughout that, I was talking about it earlier about the flask. We cannot use Quicksilver. Excuse me, a series promise, right, for the chaos resist. So I needed something to make up for it. So for the first time ever, I saw the use of an actual amethyst flask, and it fits perfectly to the build because there's not much we can do. Yeah, I was considering all the possibilities for unique flasks, and there's nothing that I really wanted here on this slot. The only other option was the dying sun for additional projectiles. But honestly, with chain and GMP, additional projectiles really don't do much for this type of build. And for single target, again, it's not going to do too much for this type of build. So the slot was very important for me, and I ended up just simply getting a chunk of chaos resist with an alchemist, because alchemist increases the effect. So if you see 33 negative plus 35 that we're getting from the resist would mean plus 2, but because of the increased effect, we're actually getting up to plus 10 chaos resist. See right here? So instead of plus 2, alchemist gives us plus 10 positive chaos resist, which is good, solid. We have some chaos resist here, chaos resist here. I searched especially for chaos resist crit and life, right, over here to mitigate that chaos, because it just feels bad when you're getting hit by a syndicate mob that just one-shots your face because you don't have enough chaos resist. I don't want to experience that. It makes me feel weak, and it kind of like hurts my self-esteem. So I didn't want that, so I just invested a little bit in some chaos resist. Basically, that's the end of the story. We got a heat flask, adrenaline, warding, the regular culprits, and then some staunching, and this is it. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you guys learned something. Thank you very much for sticking around for about an hour of me talking. Appreciate you guys hanging out. Let's activate these two. And no POB, okay? No POB. I'm sorry. There's no such thing. I'm not familiar. But my profile is public, and as far as I understand, you guys can, my profile is public. Moses Plays is my account name. Feel free to POB my characters yourselves. Thank you all. And make sure to check and drop by the stream. I'm, streaming all the time, talking all the time. Need to get some water. Thanks, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.